My name is James Okina. I'm from Calabar, Nigeria. I am currently in school, like a student at the University of Calabar. I study business management. I founded an organization called Street Priests to cater for street children. It's a big problem here in Nigeria. First of all, for a child to be considered as a street child, he has to be living in a big city, he has to be living in an urban city. So the ones who are in the villages, they have closely knitted communities, families, they can easily get food to eat, they can easily have people to care for them. But for the ones who live in the urban cities, life is a lot more difficult for them. They have to survive. People are even more hostile to them. In the big cities, nobody cares for, a random dirty child, searching the bin for food to eat. So it is very different for these two people. I mean, it's a different world entirely for them.
Yeah, cities are dehumanized.
Yes, exactly. Cities are dehumanized. So in communities, they have more warmth and more love. I started because I felt not just normal empathy towards them, but the fact that I could relate with what they were going through. When I was just 8 years old, my parents separated, and it was a very traumatic episode in my life. And I got to do a lot of things. We shoplifted, we stole, and then I could relate. I mean, basically street life, because my dad, I went to live with my dad, and he didn't have enough time to look after I and my brother, so we were vulnerable to a lot of things. So when I came off that path, I decided to found this organization in 2014. And since we started, we've been able to help take 300 kids off the streets. We currently have over 215 kids in school that we cater for their tuition fees, and we're working to set up a place where we can have these kids come and express themselves and their thoughts, basic life skills, and we combine social and emotional learning to help them reintegrate back into society. Basically, number one, we try to correct, like rehabilitate these kids, so the human connection, for them to be able to connect with some other person. And it's not all about us telling them what is wrong and what is right. It's about listening to their own stories and helping them understand that they matter, they count. They are we're all born equal, and they are as equal as every other person, irrespective of their circumstances or where they came from. There are laws that protect this child, but the laws are not being enforced. So it's one thing to have the law, it's another thing to have the law being enforced. The law enforcement officers don't do their job. Many of them drop out of schools onto the streets as a result of so many things. Some of them is dysfunctional homes, poverty and all of that. It's better to prevent a child from ending up on the streets in the first place than trying to correct all over again. So we do a lot in terms of preventing, and then one of the things we do is to educate the general public. It is too important. You see, we can't do this alone. If the people don't know, they'll be creating the problems we're trying to solve. So we try to educate people. We hold seminars, we leverage social media, we leverage the internet, we use mass media, radio, TV. Worldwide, there are over 150 million kids roaming the streets. In Nigeria, there are 8.6 million of them. We all have a responsibility towards children. And each and every one of us is a product of community. You didn't choose where you were born. You didn't choose to what family you were born into. And we don't know who is amongst these kids. There could be the person who has the solution to, some of the diseases that are ravaging the world right now, or the next technology or something. And we do not know, because we don't have any way of knowing, except that we get involved today and try to get a better future for them tomorrow. I wouldn't be here talking to you right now if not for someone who helped me. Maybe I would have been dead or sick or maybe in prison or something. But I'm here talking to you, and that means I have been empowered to help. And so even though I am not a billionaire right now or something, I feel responsible for these kids. And for me, it's not about how much we have done, it's about how much is left to do. Because the older these kids get, it's more difficult to help them. So it is crucial, it is urgent. So I think no matter how much I give, it would never be enough. So I try to give my all.
My name is Victor Enelpon. I'm 13 years old. When my mother died, I just come around and see boy outside since 2005 that I stay outside here. Why I leave the house is that my mother died, I don't have anybody, so it's only my grandmom that I have. So in 2013, he died. I didn't have anybody. Why I am on the street is that I don't have anybody. I want to get back home. Anybody that can help me, God will bless him. That I want to get back to school. I need someone that can help me and take me back to school. I stopped at primary 2. When I buy even 300 that I have, I used to buy food and eat.
It's called Street Priests. It is a youth-led organization. So we have an executive team of 8 people, but we have a volunteer network. It's volunteer-driven because we don't have any way of employing people and all of that. So we get people who are, young people who are very excited about this and excited about what we do and excited about giving their time and their resources and their skills to be able to help and build community. So we're about 65 strong. So we leverage on this network to do the things we need to do. And I like to think that, I mean, for us, it's not about the money. We do not have so much money, but we the willing, for so long, have been doing so much with so little. Right now, we're qualified to do anything with nothing. So we don't have so much help from the government. In fact, no help at all from the government in terms of money or resources or whatever. It is sad because they are supposed to be doing this. But we hope with time that they will learn. It is easier to break than to build, and I don't want to break, I want to build. And I know enough to know that it is better that I build this world and leave it a better place than I met it.
Why or how the children end up on the streets?
So the first one, which is at the core of the problem, is poor parenting. So some parents don't do enough to parent, to play their role as parents, as guiding their kids, advice. It's not basically about providing basic amenities. It's about being there for the child, being there to guide, being there to tell the child and show the child the way. Some parents don't do that. The next one is abuse. Like I said before, it's a big issue. As we speak now, children are currently being abused here. The next one is double orphans. Double orphans are children who are neglected, maybe by their relatives because their parents died or something and they were abandoned. That would not be enough to make this problem very profound if the institutions that are supposed to protect the rights of this child are functioning. And then the society as a whole is a major factor too. People are becoming increasingly selfish. People don't care for other people apart from themselves. And people don't realize that these kids might turn out to be, a robber, a criminal that could inflict harm on them in the future. Maybe about 100 years ago, it was okay to have 12 children, 10 children, 30 children, maybe 3 football teams. But times have changed. Back then, they had these children and they were economically viable because you can take the kids to the farm and then they would help you farm, and the older they get, the stronger they get, and the more children you have, the more labor you have for your farm. But it's not that way again today. First of all, that farming lifestyle is not so much there, and now it is viable that every child gets an education. And maybe 2 decades. For those 2 decades, you have to be responsible for them. How do you take care of them? How do you feed them? And so when people don't see that times have changed and they're supposed to change as times are changing, they make these mistakes that result in the problems that we see now. Well, there are way more boys on the street than there are girls. It is more difficult for a girl child. All the girls on the streets who are homeless have been sexually abused, used by people and taken advantage because they're girls. So they are way more vulnerable. I've met quite a number of them who have cried, telling me their experience of how people use them. Some of them, over time, they've gotten used to it and they began to trade sex to survive as a way of living and, surviving on the streets. And then some of them have had children on the streets. So it's really difficult for them. Society, first of all, is already patriarchal. Their rights are already subjugated, and now on the streets is even worse. So it is not the same for the girl child. It is way more difficult for the girl child, and most of them go through despicable situations. Life is way more difficult for them. So if nobody helps these kids, maybe about just 2% will be able to get off the streets and find their lives back without any help. But the remaining 98% would end up dead, because a lot of issues are responsible for the deaths of these kids, like we've seen over the years. There's some drug abuse, some are killed because people feel like they can do anything and get away with it because nobody's there to protect these kids. Some of them go crazy. The last group of them, which is a larger percentage of them, end up, perpetrating crimes. They end up perpetrating violence and mayhem because they've grown up to think the world doesn't care, so why should I care? So nobody cares for me, and as a result, I wouldn't care at all. See, people know better, they will do better. You see, if you have to be a doctor, you spend so many years learning and training, but being a parent, you get no training. It's overnight, and it's the most important job in the world. Most kids end up on the streets by dropping out of school first. So they drop out of school before they end up on the streets. So we figured out that if we can help kids stay in school, then we would mitigate the factors of street children by hampering the growth of them on the streets. So we've been working on something. We already have 215 kids in school now, but we want to jump that figure because there are way more of them that are yet to drop out. Actually, 10.5 million Nigerians of school age do not go to school as we speak now.
Chasing rainbows, near or far, I'll color your world. Ooh. Someday I will find you, shooting star. You belong in my head, in my head.
Every child has the right to education. It's one of their rights. It shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a right. So we're working so hard to ensure that they get an education, because that would make all the difference for them. To keep a child in school here annually for tuition fees is just about, let's say $30–40. And that's chicken change for a whole year. I mean, you can spend that on lunch. The problem is sometimes charities go to the West and say they're helping out here, and people give them chunk of money and they don't know where their money is going. If organizations who are already existing do what they are supposed to do, then we would have lesser problems than we already have now. But most of the organizations existing are not doing the actual work. They are diverting funds, doing some shady deals and all of that. With the work we're doing, trust is everything. So if the kids and people don't trust you, it's a problem. Many people have taken advantage of them, take pictures with them, show somewhere else, get some money, and then they don't come back to help them. So we're trying to use this new technology to establish a direct connection between the children who need the help to stay in school and people who are willing to give, because I like to believe the people who are willing to help, but they don't know how. So we're trying to bridge that gap with technology. By not doing anything, you're already part of the problem. So try as much as possible to not just stand in the middle, but be actively involved in ensuring that these kids have a better future, because kids might just be 25% of our population, but they are 100% of the future. The world is really messed up right now, and if we would fix it, we have to start with the kids. We have to start with the little ones. I like to think about this world as, irrespective of our differences, I think that is our strength. And you're from halfway across the world, and we met and we just connected and we were able to relate on so many levels. It just goes to show that our differences can bring us more together than it can divide us. And I think about the fact that, for example, a mosaic. The mosaic is very beautiful because it has all these different pieces brought together. I like to think about the whole world like that. Because we're different does not mean we have to be afraid of each other. You traveled all the way down me here And one of the things you're expecting to see were people who were very different from you. So imagine if you traveled all the way and you came and everybody just looked like you. It would have been, I mean, maybe you'd have even been depressed.
The boring world.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's our place to ensure that we preserve our world. It's our place to ensure that we look out for each other and we have this empathy towards the fellow man, irrespective of how different he looks or how different he speaks. Okay, I'm 18.
18 years old.
Yes. Well, in creating change, the first thing you have to do is to believe that it's possible. So the first thing I'd like to believe that I think is the fact that change is, first of all, it's possible, it is imminent. Very soon things will change. And I can see that with the fact that there are more people like me who are coming up to be responsible for issues that are, you know, bordering our society, and then we have more young people getting into government. One of the problems is bad governance. So if more young people, if we have better governance, more young people who are more informed, more intellectually inclined, and more equipped with the tools to better govern, things would definitely change for the better, and then we would have many of these problems solved from its roots. So I like to think that change is here, change is close. I have a lot of friends who are very passionate about community development, who are doing the same things in different ways, you know, trying to help out. So I think it's only a matter of time before things actually get very better. And I'm really excited about it.
You're always mine.